You guessed it. If you're here with me today, if you can hear it, it's all a kōrero about. Come on. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the things. Bit of a 90 jam. Hopefully in the era of a lot of mothers, so we can relate to this. Let's talk about sex now to the people. Yeah, welcome to this vlog. This is Pūhā Kōrero, part of my mama proactive parenting solutions for mamas raising rangatira mo āpōpō. Ko waiaho, ko White-Haverkamp. That is my name, but actually my ingoa Māori is Riana Te Uira. Nō reira. Welcome to this vlog. I'm glad to have you here. If you've got an opportunity to pull up a seat and have a listen to some tips that I'm going to give you today about how to initiate those kōrero with our teenagers. You know, those 6 kōrero. So just to give you a little bit of a background, I am an unapologetic, unashamed full-time mama to 5 daughters from the ages of 21 to 13 years. I have no sons, so unfortunately my experiences come as a mama Māori raising daughters and the discoveries that I've come across over these years. So I've had many first learnings. For example, I have counted the amount of cut lunches I've made over the 13 years that I've devoted myself as a full-time mama is 11,700 school lunches, thousands upon thousands of sanitary products, thousands upon thousands of kōrero about Māori activism, Māori culture, Māori tikanga, kura kaupapa Māori, kohanga reo, politics, religion, and recently, and when I say recently, perhaps over the last 3 years, about sex and how we can ensure that our girls are engaged in sexual, healthy relationships with their safety paramount. And so from my experience with my children, as well as my PhD that I'm heading towards, currently I am doing a master's in the sexual health area concerning our rangatahi. And my passion in this field has really driven me, and it's formed out of my children, has driven me to continue on the pathway of learning through the academy. So yeah, in January 2021, I'll be commencing my PhD studies, which will be all around, you guessed it, sexual well-being. Now, I really like to socialize that word because for many of us, even just saying the word is quite difficult. And I've noticed that when I even talk to people about my research, it stops. Any further inquiry stops as soon as I mention the word sexual health. And I found that quite an interesting scenario to deal with. And upon that, I realized, wow, we have been, for many, not all though, but for many of us Māori, we have been encapsulated in a Victorianized way of thinking or a belief system that doesn't serve us as Māori. So where I'm going to get into is I'm going to talk about two reasons why we need to learn how to initiate these kōrero or communications with our rangatira mo āpōpō. We must always believe that our tamariki are the future leaders. So why would we not want to talk to them about these sensitive subject matters as they've been referred to? Then I'm going to give 3 tips that will hopefully hope you as mama, in talking with your children about sexual well-being. And we all know that it's sexual activity in itself is only a small component, but actually what makes up the sexual well-being is the respect for themselves, self-respect, respect for the opposite sex, and also maintaining the sacredness of their body, of their spirit, of their emotional well-being. And with all those components in part, I'm going to go right into it. And I'm glad that I opened up this forum yesterday, and immediately we've had an opportunity to engage in kōrero. And as I promised, here is a kōrero. So 2 reasons why. Well, the reasons why, if we don't inform our tamariki where they're going to obtain their information from, and that can be quite scary. And if you're like me, we're always mindful of the amount of access that our children have to the cyber world. And let's be real, a lot of the sexual content our kids can access is obviously, they can do it in the privacy of their own bedrooms and find content. And that content is such a misogynist view. And what I mean by misogynist is that girls have been objectified, and that's how society views them. And so if the role modeling demonstrates, and we see it in our music videos, we see it in a lot of social media content, that our girls have been objectified, the boys see it as, yeah, that's how girls like to be noticed. So what I'm talking about is a problem that's prolific right across the country. Nobody is isolated from this, and we cannot pretend that it doesn't exist. In fact, it's more prevalent than we realize. Oh, this hair, I don't know what this hair's doing. It's more prevalent than we actually realize. The exchange of nude photos between our youth is a real problem. Girls being asked to exchange naked shots in return for a photo. And what happens with that photo or that image is shared often enough, our young ones don't realize that once it's out on the web, it's out there for anyone and everyone across the globe, and you can't recanter it. So really informing our children is better to come from ourselves than for them to go off searching and looking in areas that are totally misinformed and misguiding for our youth. Secondly, the second reason why is about safety. And I mean safety from sexual violence, sexual acts of violence. That's the first and foremost concern, obviously, for all parents, is that we do not want any of our children, whether they're boys or girls, to be violated against. We also want them to understand what consent means, and that it's okay to say no. So I just paused there because this is a really big kaupapa that's close to my heart, is actually, do our kids understand what consent means, and that checking in for consent is consistent, and it doesnn happen after. It's not something that's assumed. I know that there was a marketing campaign some years ago, and I thought it was a really effective one. I will try and find it and share it once in here again, explaining about, do you want a cup of tea, using that kind of analogy. So those are 2 real reasons why you need to take the courage to initiate the conversation. Now, before you actually initiate any conversation with your child, you need to take into account what are they currently, what is the current content of the curriculum program that they have within their school. Have you signed the consent form for them to participate and understand the extent or what's involved within that program? A good sexual health program will include content about healthy relationships. It will include content about how to keep them safe. It will also include content about consent, but more so focusing on access to the cyber world as well. So we know that from the findings that our children do learn better with their own peers, regardless of some saying, oh, you know, where's the right location? Should it be the school? Should it be at home? Some children just do not want to engage, and we have to accept that. You may not be the right person that they want to talk to, but find an auntie or an uncle or somebody that has a really close relationship with that child that they look up to engage. So it may not be you, mum, and it may not be you, dad, either, but it may be somebody else that's closer within your family. Another person to consider is the grandmother or the grandfather. Grandparents actually have, believe it or not, they have a better open lens for their mokopuna than perhaps we as parents do. And they have a vested interest also in the well-being. So before you initiate the kōrero, make sure that, perhaps I'm not the right one. Perhaps, have a contingency plan in place, that it's a really close, trusted whanaunga that could be the secondary source to speak with your child. Okay, so I don't think, did we get to the tips? Yeah, so that's number one. Do your homework beforehand. Look into the school, what's the current content, and then consider, am I the right person for this role? Or do you think that, and you should have a fairly good gauge, do you think that perhaps it's somebody closer within your immediate whānau network who could do that kōrero? 2, you must always give your child a heads up of what's coming. Don't try to ambush them with a hui and then bring up the subject matter. You must let them know beforehand that, hey, look, I just want to spend some time with you where we could go on a walking, coffee date, but don't, and give them at least 48 hours preface before you do that. Don't say, okay, I'm going to give you notice and in 3 hours we're going off. No, they need a little bit of time. And also accept if that child says, no, I don't feel right talking to you about that. But then, were you done your homework? Then you can say, hey, well, would you like to talk to auntie or koro or nan? Would you like to talk? It's really important. I understand and I respect that you don't feel comfortable speaking to me, but maybe your auntie or whoever the family member is, you could talk to them. And I would feel good if you could talk with your whanaunga. So going back to number 2, give them a heads up. And then you spend some time, don't do the homework. Doesn't include being an investigator and going and checking out all their social media chat or their messenger. And if you do that, do not let them know that you've done that. That is an instant trust staircase downward. spiraling downward, and an immediate conversation killer. Your child will not trust you if you actually go and do investigative work like that. Okay? So if you have done it, do not let them know, and do not let the fears of what you've discovered influence your kōrero with them when you do actually initiate the kōrero. So if you're worried about, or your reasons for initiating this kōrero have come about through a fears-based, you really need to actually just unravel why it is you're feeling that way before you go into conversation with them. You need to understand why you have those fears. Does it relate back to historical trauma for yourself? Does it trigger other emotions? Are there other insecurities? You really need to address those, and I would recommend that you write them down and do a bit of work on that yourself before you engage in kōrero. So there's a bit of foundational work you have to do prior to just going in to the kōrero. Okay, it's all about building the trust, I call it a bridge of trust. So you've got to build that bridge of trust between you and your child in communicating. You've also got to let them know that it's a safe space for you and him or her to kōrero, that anything they say will come free without any judgment from you. Yeah, I'll say that again. So anything your child has to say to you during that conversation between the two of you will come without judgment. So that really means, aroha, you need to be able to let down any barriers in what they're going to be able to say. And you need to be prepared that something that they say, you may not like to hear it. But if you're going to give the look of astonishment or judgment, kōrero killer, instant kōrero killer, anō. So, number 3, I'm getting there. Number 3, remain calm, and please leave any of your fears around that marginalized view that's been perpetuated against our Māori teenage, that Māori are risky, they engage in risky sexual behavior and have, teenage pregnancy. I really don't like that line. It really has impacted the way that we parent and the fear that we permeate within our relationship between our children. So be prepared for whatever that comes when you're in the conversation. Be open and keep reminding yourself during that conversation, I may not like what I'm going to hear, but it's better that they can build the purpose of the communication is to build the bridge of trust between the two of you. Okay? So that's this kōrero about 2 reasons why, and then 3 tips to help initiate, and there's a lot of layering in between. So do your homework. Remember, the key objective is to build a bridge of trust. And 3, if you're successful and you've initiated the kōrero between the two, give yourself a big mihi. Give yourself a big mihi, because it's not an easy step. If you are, you're working in uncharted territory for yourself as a parent. And, acknowledge yourself for that. So be brave, and watch next week as I put another vlog about, going through the kōrero. And then other subject matters. Gosh, there's so much. And if you're keen to hear any more, give it a like, and I encourage you to invite your friends who may be on the same path as yourself. Nō reira, kia pai o koutou wiki. Ka kite.